Hi.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We're gonna get started now.
Good.
Yeah. All right, so we begin this meeting by acknowledging the land in which we gather in the traditional territory of Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe. Many people continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaty as the land protected by the Dignity One Snow Law Agreement. Today, this gathering place home to many First Nations people. And acknowledging that reminds us of the great thing that is directly related to resources of friendship and Indigenous speech. Before we start, is there any declarations of interest? Looking for a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
All right, see you there. And approval to the minutes.
Oh, good.
Good. All right, let's get getting started on the James Wilson Share Heritage Study.
I just want to say a huge thank you to both James and Margaret from the City of St. Catharines for joining us today. And Alicia from SCDA, who is the consultant leading the Heritage Study. So I'm giving 1 sec to just quickly share my screen with the presentation, and we'll turn it over.
Yeah, so maybe before the presentation started, I'll kind of add a little bit of context, and probably everybody's aware of this, but essentially, the downtown has about 100 listed heritage properties. These been added over the last 3 or 4 years in particular. We're focusing on a lot of buildings in the downtown. And then last year, at the beginning of the year, board changed the rules on us about how heritage works in the province. And so essentially, these listed properties will lose their listed status at the end of this year. So as of January 1st, 100. About 100 heritage status at the end of the year. There's about 35,000 across the province. So from a heritage perspective, people in this field are really concerned about that. In terms of, what the next step would be to protect them, the obvious thing is designation. And designating properties individually is really challenging. It's time consuming, it takes a lot of resources. We have 1 heritage planner, that's me, and we have a heritage committee, which are all volunteers. And so to individually look at a building would be quite the challenge. The other tool we have though is heritage districts. And heritage districts are kind of a blanket area that have heritage status, designated status, but there's flexibility there in terms of what types of policies and guidelines kind of guide development and changes and stuff like that in that area. And so early last year, with council proposal to pursue this as our strategy for dealing with the changes to the Heritage Act, council said yes, go ahead. So then we engaged with consultants, so we brought in Stantec, so they got started earlier this year on this project. And essentially, it's a 2-phase project, and last we'll go into what that involves. But it's probably going to be at the first stage will be about 6 months, and assuming it moves forward beyond that, it'll be another 6 months. And from a city perspective, our hope is that by this time next year, there's a district in place downtown. And what that looks like depends a lot on you as well, and the business owners and the owners in the downtown, because we want to make sure there's something inclusive and a process that the downtown owners and business operators take ownership of as well. Don't want to just impose anything on you, right? So that's why we're here. So I'll pass along to Lasha, and she can kind of give an overview of the study. And then we can have a conversation, because I think a big part of this is there's a lot of myths about heritage and what does heritage mean and what does designation mean, and we're happy to chat about that, how we do things at City Hall. So go ahead, Lasha.
Thanks. So I'm Lasha Jones. I'm with Stantec. I'm the Senior Cultural Heritage Specialist on our team, and I've done a lot of districts, and I'm happy and excited to be working on this one. I'm going to do a pretty brief presentation here because I want to leave lots of time for questions and discussion. I know that's a really important part, especially when we have the opportunity to have these meetings together to get a sense of your thoughts and concerns and feelings about heritage districts and how that will apply to your community. So I want to give a really brief overview of my team, what an HCD or Heritage Conservation District is, and a bit of the overview about this specific project and what we're going to be doing. At Stantec, we have a really strong health and safety culture, so we'll start with a safety moment. So just a reminder to manually remember to manually turn on your headlights in the rain or snow. Hopefully, we are getting out of the winter season, so this may be a little bit less timely, but Spring does have the tendency to surprise us and throw some fun weather at us. So just something to be mindful of when you're getting in your car at nighttime or early mornings.
Sorry to interrupt, just because we do have a couple of people on camera, can I just ask you, I'm sorry, I don't have a mic for you, just
Nope,
speak up a little bit.
I have a quiet voice, so I will try and do it a little louder. If anyone can't hear me, just let me know and I'll try again. So our team, we've got a very diverse team of people. We have planning backgrounds, history backgrounds, we have urban designers, heritage specialists, thank you. And we've also got engagement specialists, particularly on this project to help us out when we've got community meetings and stuff like that for general engagement and specifically for Indigenous engagement as well. So with us, not today in person, but you might see these folks at other meetings in the future. We've got Nancy Reed, our project manager, Megan Rivard, who's our quality control, kind of overseeing the project, myself, senior cultural heritage specialist, Frank Smith, who's going to be heading up our research, Dipali Dang, who's our urban designer, Stephen Oliver, and Jennifer Mills on our community engagement side. We've got a lot of other staff who are going to be working on this project as well, helping out with research and inventory, but these are the main faces and names you're likely to see. In terms of our previous experience, my team, SCDA, we've been involved on a lot of heritage conservation districts. We've been involved on what we call both sides of the table. So we've written a lot of conservation district studies and plans, including recent ones for downtown St. Thomas and work in Bloor Street West in Toronto, a neighborhood called the St. Clair district in Hamilton, downtown Kincardine, Village Maple in Vaughan. We're currently working through one in Main Street on Grimsby, as well as many others across the province. We've also worked for property owners who own properties within districts, developers who are working on new projects within heritage districts. So we have a really good comprehensive sense, both in terms of writing these plans and working with them in sort of the aftermath. So what is a heritage conservation district? So as James mentioned, it's a way of designating properties under the Heritage Act. So there are individually designated properties that fall under what we call Part 4 designations, and conservation districts, which fall under Part 5. And so Part 5 designation is a way of looking at the heritage value or heritage character of an entire area as opposed to one single property. It's the ability to designate that entire area. It's a little bit different than Part 4 because in Part 4 designations on an individual property, you might have heritage attributes that are very specific to that building, right? Windows, decorative trim or brickwork or things like that, very specific features, and those would be usually laid out in the bylaws, things that you would want to maintain and preserve in that building. With districts, the heritage attributes tend to be broader and apply to the area as a whole. So not necessarily every individual building has its own set of attributes, but more the types of buildings that contribute to the specific character of an area, whether that's residential, commercial, industrial, or what have you. HCDs are areas where the cultural heritage value of that area as a whole often extends beyond the sum of their parts. So in a district, you may not have every single building that is the same level of heritage value or the same type, but it's the combination of all of those things that make the building or the district unique and special. We also use the Ontario Heritage Toolkit, which was put together by what is now the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism. Back then it was the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport, I think. We've been through many name changes. There's sort of guidebooks and tools that we use and have been used to guide how these districts are studied and put together and managed. And HCDs typically involve a two-phase process, as James mentioned, a study phase and a plan. We are currently at the beginning stages of the study phase, and we don't enter a plan stage unless there's council approval to do so, and unless the study phase indicates that there is merit and cultural heritage value, and there is warrant for doing a district. Why we do heritage conservation districts is because we like them as a tool for managing change. Again, it's different than when you designate an individual building. You're looking at a much bigger, broader area. It's a tool for managing change in that broader area. It's not intended to freeze things in time or stop things from changing or to freeze development or to not allow development to happen, but to manage development and growth that we know is going to occur in a way that fits with the value of the neighborhood or community and in a way that is compatible to it, whatever that may be. And as of 2020, Ontario contains 134 heritage conservation districts. So this is a tool that has been widely used throughout the province for several decades. What we try and think about HCDs as doing, the purpose of them is that they create a planning process that respects the community's history and identity. It allows us to deal with the concept of the heritage of a broader area and apply that to a big area and see how we can manage and change that. We manage change with the process of heritage alteration permits for certain renovations, restorations, or constructions, but not everything. The heritage process is very clear that in every heritage conservation district plan, there is a list of alterations that do not need heritage alteration permits. So there are specific things that you can make certain changes without needing to go through the extra step of approvals. We think that HCDs foster an appreciation of a community's heritage resources. They can help kind of instill a sense of pride and a sense of community when people are able to recognize and have a district that acknowledges a specific period of time or growth or evolution in the community. It helps protect the integrity of buildings, streetscapes, structures, and landforms and natural features in an area, more so than protecting buildings individually one by one, because it kind of knits everything together and can kind of look at that broader picture. And they can be useful for promoting cultural tourism and maintaining and contributing to sort of a downtown brand or downtown feel. We've seen that in a lot of cases. You know, heritage districts have specific entry points where you might find features that let people know that they're entering into a specific area and stuff like that. And they have often what we refer to as a look and feel. You often walk into a heritage conservation district or areas that can be considered a heritage conservation district, and you know that you're in a place that's slightly different than the rest of the surroundings. HCDs also don't do a lot of things. We don't use them to prohibit construction or new development. We want to see growth and change occurring in heritage districts. We just want to make sure that it's done in a way that is compatible, and we can talk a little bit more about what compatible means later on. HCDs, and there's been studies on this by the University of Waterloo. They tend not to, at least from the research shows, they don't lower property values for properties that are in there. They tend to maintain heritage property values, or in some cases, sometimes increase them. They don't cause owners to lose all property rights. Yes, there's a process if alterations are required, but it's a process that is part of the broader planning process. And you know, there's requirements, just like you would need requirements sometimes for building permits and things like that. They also don't require all new construction to match a specific historical style or to kind of revert things back. If heritage conservation districts really only manage change when future alterations are proposed, there's no requirements to force property owners to change their buildings to go back a certain way if they're not intending to make an alteration. And they don't require owners to require heritage alteration permits for minor alterations, as I mentioned. So there's a long list that's developed in consultation with community of things that should not require heritage alteration permits, both because that's onerous to property owners and because staff just certainly don't have the capacity to do that when you've got an area with many properties. So it's mutually beneficial as well. So as James mentioned, there are two phases of an HCD. The study phase and the plan phase. So we are in the beginning portions of the study phase. And the point of the study phase is really to determine whether an area qualifies for designation under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So we look at a number of factors. We do an inventory of each property within the study area. We have to evaluate it with using criteria from the Ontario Heritage Act. We look at the characteristics from the Ontario Heritage Toolkit. And we look at sort of the overall sense and feel to see whether it sort of meets these thresholds and these characteristics enough to qualify. If it does and the council approves, we move on to the plan stage. And that's the stage where we really set the framework for managing change by preparing a plan with policies and guidelines about how change is managed in the future. So there would be discussions for policies and guidelines on alterations to buildings, additions to buildings, new development, streetscaping, public spaces. HCDs apply both to private property owners and any publicly owned property by the city as well. So the city has to follow the policies and guidelines that are established. In the study phase, to help determine whether an area has cultural and heritage value, we do a lot of historical research. We look at how we create a property and landscape inventory of everything in the district, review the land use and policies that are applicable in the broader planning process. We do an analysis an evaluation that is required under the Ontario Heritage Act, and we provide recommendations. It's not uncommon for study areas to not be designated as they were initially outlined in the proposal stage. So what we have in this area is quite a large study area. It's possible that not all of that area will meet the criteria. So in some cases, we have districts that are shrunk a little bit to when we find where the concentration of heritage resources actually are. In other cases, you may have heritage resources outside of that cluster, and so we look at different tools for those areas as well. But it's not uncommon for the areas recommended for designation to be a little bit different than the whole area that is studied. We have public information sessions in both phases of the project. So in the study phase, we're going to have two of them, one early on in the beginning, probably coming up this spring, where we're going to look for community input, share a little bit about what the research and inventory work has done so far, and really use that to gather feedback that helps us understand the community better, what the values are, and what places and parts of the study area are important. We do a lot of community notices also to keep people informed throughout the process, because we don't want any of this to be a surprise to anybody when we get to the end of the process. As you can see here, we have a very large study area. I think we're in the ballpark of 400 or 500 individual properties that make up the study area. It encompasses a good chunk of the downtown area, and as James mentioned, a lot of the listed properties that have been added to the Heritage Register over the last few years. When we look at historical research, we're looking at review of secondary sources, primary sources, and a lot of historical mapping to help us understand the evolution of this area and the changes it's been through over time. When we do an inventory, we do a pedestrian survey. So we walk the entire area, we take pictures of every single property, we digitally collect and upload the information, and it helps us because when we get to the study phase and doing that analysis, we can put together a lot of mapping and a lot of charts that show us the particular features of the study area that can be really helpful in determining what the ages of many buildings are, helping identify clusters that may relate to specific periods of development. It helps us analyze what the general heights and architectural materials, styles, and setbacks and stuff like that in the district are, which would help during the plan stage, because when we create policies and guidelines, we want them to be very reflective of what exists in the community.
Just a quick question. Even with my glasses on, I couldn't quite see, how far does the area go? Does it encompass Geneva Street?
So it encompasses the west side of Geneva Street. We kind of had to draw lines somewhere. So I guess technically, you know, you could, if there's something on the east side that we thought made sense to incorporate.
I'm just thinking like the church.
Right, yeah, so it doesn't extend that far.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I just until I was ready to get too far ahead.
No, and that's one thing that's really helpful for us is if there are things that are just outside of the study area, obviously we know there's heritage resources within the community that might be well outside of this boundary. That's not something that we can really look at. But if there is something where it's if you've got one side of a street or, you know, we're looking one street over, we like to know about that because that's something sometimes, you know, when we did the Kincardine study, we did end up actually looking at an additional area and expanding it based on community feedback because they wanted us to look at something that was outside of the original boundary that we were given by the staff, but it made sense because it was a connection to the waterfront and stuff like that, which really tied in with the
I think, I mean, that church, like, I mean, I've gone so many times that I've never been able to go inside, it's always closed, when I go, but is such, like, I mean, there's words to kind of encapsulate how important that church is to our region and to our community, like it just happens to be downtown. I think that if there's specific guidelines that people and developers need to follow, I would never want to see anything like, you know, encroach on or do anything to that church, or that it's able to get additional revenue or grant money because it's part of an area, or like so that it can actually maybe be open all the time.
Yeah, so the Salem, this is the Salem.
Yeah, the Salem
So
church.
the Salem church is historically the black church for the downtown, that's where Harry Chapman was.
Yes.
So super important site, it's a national historic site.
Yes.
It's already designated, which is great. So part of the lines on that, you know, I know it's kind of jagged in spots, like
Yeah.
we kind of, I had to kind of carve out certain areas that already had designated properties. we're less concerned about anything that they're included because they already have their own form of protection. So, and when we hire somebody like Lasha to come and do the work, they look at the number of properties that are involved in the study area, and that's how they get it. And so you start carving out areas that don't have heritage significance or already have.
I know
Like,
it was already
so-
heritage, but
Yeah.
sometimes if it just kind of gets clustered into another area,
Sure.
maybe they can get more money to make it, like, I know that they need renovations and other things like that, like, I don't know how this works, but.
Yeah, no, that's great feedback, thanks.
That's actually really kind of a good segue into this next slide about consultation. So we really value consultation in these studies because we know that it's part of the community. Yep.
I have two questions, please. The designation of a heritage district, is that temporary or permanent?
It would be permanent.
It will be permanent. Well, I understand that every property within the heritage designation will be under the control of the Heritage Act or the Heritage. So every property, irrespective of age, is now under the control.
Yes, I can get into that. That's a really good question, and we can talk about some of the nuances of that in a second. Maybe, can I get through?
Any more questions, please?
That is a really good question, and I'm looking forward to coming back to that. So in terms of consultation, we do a lot of public information centers. Like I said before, we're going to be doing 2 in the study. We've got steering committee meetings that happen frequently throughout this process. We're going to be having presentations to the Heritage Committee and Council. So there's lots of points for lots of opportunities for us to get feedback from the community and both to give you guys information and updates on how the study is progressing. Outside of those opportunities, we also welcome input because we really want to know and understand your community. We want to, if you've got something and people aren't able to make it to a public consultation event or things like that, we do a lot of online tools as well to help people stay engaged throughout the process and then provide input and feedback. But we do welcome feedback and input at any time as well. So, contact our team directly or James so that we make sure that we're addressing things as the study moves forward. So I think thanks again for having us today, and this is a really good point to open up the discussion. So I can start by responding to David's question. So yes, in a district, the entire area would be designated. So again, we would, through the study, outline what area we think meets the criteria, if any. In some cases, we go through the process and there's just not enough merit. Usually, by the time something's gone through the process of being identified for study, there's a good likelihood that some part of it could or will. So part of the study is to kind of narrow down that area and refine those boundaries and figure out what boundary really makes sense and is defensible. As you pointed out, every property in that area, once you define the formal boundary, the recommended boundary, would be designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, whether it was built in 1880 or 1980. But the way that Heritage Conservation District plans are structured is that they provide different guidelines for different types of properties. So the guidelines that might be in place for heritage buildings built in the 1800s, 1900s, what have you, or buildings that have higher integrity, more specific heritage features are going to have different guidelines than buildings that were built more recently or have lost a lot of their features and things like that. Part of the process through the study is and the plan phase is that when we refine the area and recommend a boundary, we need to assign a sort of status to the properties. And so we usually use contributing or non-contributing. And so contributing properties tend to be those ones where once we've identified sort of the characteristics of a neighborhood or heritage district, or its sort of key periods of development or key architectural styles, or all of these things that we go through as we go through the study process and identify. Contributing buildings usually fit within that category. They contribute to that overall sense of heritage and character. Non-contributing buildings are still part of the community, part of the area, part of the heritage district, fall under designation, but they have different requirements, right? So those are typically buildings, if you have non-contributing buildings, where demolitions are more likely to be permitted, where you've got more less, you're not going to need a heritage alteration permit to change the windows on a 2012 building versus your 1912 building or something like that. So while everything does become designated, they are treated differently depending on their status and the ages and things like that.
Yeah, so for example, in Port Dalhousie, it's a massive heritage district, with about 500 properties, one of the biggest in the province. Our cutoff date is 1950, and so when they created the guideline, they said, you know what, that makes sense for us, 1950. Anything before that would be a contributing building, so we look at those with a little more detail. Anything after 1950 is usually just, yep, you're good. You're in good shape, whatever you're going to do. But what this actually helps us do, because it might seem weird that a building from, 2012 has been designated. It's like, well, if one of those buildings were to be demolished at some point, we can then do design guidelines for what the new building might look like, right? So that allows us to ensure that new properties kind of fit the character of the area. And we design exactly what those guidelines are and the policies to make it something that the community wants. Because we've actually lost some of those abilities with some of the changes to the Heritage Act.
And one thing we like to say in every heritage conservation district is different and really needs to be tailored to the needs of the community, right? There are some areas that are small. I mean, some districts in the province consist of a single city block, in a residential neighborhood. So those policies are obviously going to be very different than an urban downtown area where you have a lot of expectation for growth and development in the coming decades. The policies of, it's not a one size fits all approach. While the legislation and the tools and the overall umbrella is the same, the way we treat them needs to be tailored to the community. And that's why for us, it's so important to understand what the community values are. We know some heritage districts and some communities, they want caps on height limits. They don't want buildings over 4 stories, 6 stories, 8 stories, whatever. We know that other districts are more comfortable with that, but in certain areas. So it's our job is to review that planning policy framework, to understand from the community where things are going, what the desires are, and come up with guidelines that try and address all of those factors and make something that is flexible and feasible for the community. We don't want these districts to be burdensome in so much that they just become not effective, because that's the worst thing for a heritage district, right? Is when it's not useful and not effective and people don't follow the rules, or it's too difficult to have new development, then they're not really operating well. And so what we want to do is create a district that is responsive to where a community is going, but also reflects and kind of celebrates the past and the heritage that kind of started it all.
Okay. And then I think first.
Sorry, and this is, I guess, more addressed to the city. We this is not occurring, so, this is more secondhand, though, some firsthand knowledge. We do have some people that are renting buildings in the downtown area that would be considered heritage. And they're having a challenge with respect to permitting. And they're having, just getting their businesses up and running, but also with respect to, trying to meet the mandates from the province for accessible bathrooms. And I'm probably know more than me because I obviously she's municipal, but I think it's 2026. It's at the end of 26. They have to have the bathrooms done. Is it the end of 25? Okay, but I'm not sure, and I know it's provincial, which is not you guys, but is there a plan? Is there I'm sure the city's obviously looking at this, but when all of a sudden you have like a heritage district and we're already kind of having issues with respect to like maybe municipal permitting, and then you layer on a provincial permit that you have no control over, in essence, someone from the province can just pop up and say, hey, you don't have a bathroom, but especially when you kind of marry that with heritage, accessible buttons and all these things with old infrastructure, old doors, when you're trying to maintain things could be exorbitant with respect to cost. If a building were to all of a sudden become a building that's offering a service or like something that requires a bathroom. I happen to own a dog store and our building therefore does not need an accessible bathroom. But if I was to leave my maybe in a coffee shop wanted to go in there, they would need an accessible bathroom, but it would be heritage.
Yeah, I personally, I would never want to see heritage get in the way of accessibility. Like that to me seems wrong. So the idea is that everybody should be able to enjoy the downtown and enjoy all the stores and everything there's on, right? And the idea of the heritage saying, no, sorry, you can't put a ramp in, or no, sorry, no.
Oh, I guess that's not what I mean, is that just say if, you were to have, so just say this one building, it's gonna cost about $10,000 to put in the accessible bathroom because of the conundrum
Okay,
of the whole
yeah.
building
I
inside,
understand.
which is already way more money than they had to, which they have to now find to build it. But it has a very old door out front, which it has no problem getting inside, there's not gonna be an issue. But to have the button potentially, which it looks like they're gonna have to have, and it's an old wooden door. The electrical is not there, like this is an old building, do you know what I'm saying? Like, so now when you have massive costs to accommodate this specialized bathroom, which of course we want people to access the downtown. But you are now faced with, potentially tens of thousands of dollars of cost, which is not even remotely feasible, which will then just say, we can't do it easier.
So I think this kind of goes back to a couple points to address. I think this goes back in some ways to the sort of flexibility and tailoring things to the community. Our team also believes that accessibility is really important, and we always have a section in our HCD plans on accessibility and how accessible changes should be considered. Again, wherever we can, we want to try and make it compatible with heritage, but we recognize in some cases there's going to be issues, and usually we provide overall guidelines, but a lot of that gets dealt with on a sort of case-by-case basis and sort of discussions with the heritage planner if alterations need to occur. The other thing I think that's really important to note is that heritage districts are typically only concerned about what's happening to the outside of a building. And especially when you've got commercial areas and stuff like that, we're typically only really concerned about what's happening on a front facade. Or even in a residential, whether you put up a shed or something or a pool in your backyard, that's none of our concern. It's not a heritage matter. It's really what is outward facing to the street and part of that sort of visible and experience from the public realm. That is usually what's kind of part of that heritage character and where the heritage attributes of an overall district come from. We're not concerned about changes that happen inside a building unless it's designated individually and has interior heritage attributes, which is not all that.
No, they would be in a wrong right? Where it's like there are features inside that are so nice that we wouldn't want to see changes. But nothing in downtown would have those similar, as part of the heritage district would not have any of its that.
And with changes to the Heritage Act where heritage planners and heritage policymakers are somewhat more limited in what we can do, heritage districts I think we have to look at them differently than we did in the past. We have to look at them as different types of tools, and they may not be the kinds that they were in the past where you have very detailed guidelines about, sort of nitpicky features and things like that. They might be more of a broader management tool about where development goes and demolition control and change and stuff like that. And in the future, there may be less concern about individual heritage features, with the exception of a few, maybe key things that come up through that community consultation process. So that's really what we want to understand from people is what matters most to you in a heritage community, right? Like we've worked on districts where communities themselves want to have a much more rigid control and they want to establish guidelines and policies for specific paint colors. We don't necessarily always go into that level of detail unless it's what a community really wants, right? Like if a community says, we don't care about paint colors, we don't care about, little details about this, windows aren't a big concern. What we care about is X, Y, and Z. And we want to hear that, and we want to create plans and policies if we get to that stage that help to respond to that.
How long do you plan to, how will I name this if you're in time study phase? These are a report we can see that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at usually roughly minimum 6 months per phase. It can sometimes be longer depending on the consultation process and council meeting dates and things like that. At the very beginning, we just started.
Yeah, so yeah.
We're very early stages. Like I said, we've just kind of started delving into the historical research. We're hoping to get out, now that we're edging into springtime, we're kind of hoping to get out and start doing that inventory very soon so that we can start to get a sense of what we're working with. And I think it would ideally be looking at a public consultation meeting in the spring at some point. We avoid doing them over the summer because we know that's when a lot of people are away on vacation and it's harder to get, community interest and input when everyone's out enjoying the wonderful weather. So we tend to structure consultation events usually in the spring and fall and stuff like that. And at the end of the process, we would prepare a study. It'd be it's usually a lengthy document, but it's going to go through sort of the overall historical development, have summaries of the existing planning and policy framework. We have an inventory that we attach to it. We do a lot of that mapping and analysis to show people really, where the, what architectural style everything is, what ages buildings are, where you've got anomalies of different types of property types and things like that. And then we tend to, again, we like to use a lot of kind of data and analysis and doing this digital inventory collection that we do allows us to do that. And then we can really show like concentrations of heritage features. And we can do that. And we have to evaluate things by the Ontario Heritage Act as criteria. And the requirements now are that 25% of properties within to be qualified as a district now, an area must have at least 25% of properties that meet 2 or more of the provincial criteria. So then we're able to map that and show, okay, if we've gone through the evaluation of each property, we can put up a map that show us a map that meets 2 or more. And then we can sometimes see, and we do usually sort of like a gradient, we can look at that and say, okay, here's that cluster, it's right here, or something like that. It really helps us to understand, maybe this is the area we want to be looking at where that boundary goes. Or if you've got an area that's just really scattered resources, then we kind of figure out about what we can do with that too. So we prepare that study. The draft gets released to the public for comment and review. We take comments and stuff back, we revise, and that's what gets the final study gets presented to council, and that's what they base their decision on of whether to move to that plan stage.
I'll just add, the goal also is to have a steering committee. So it's going to be a couple of members of our heritage committee, all attend meetings. Rachel, I believe, will attend them, but also we'd love to have members of the BIA, whether it's constituents or anyone here, and they'll be involved in the process as well. To be able to help them provide input and help guide things and make sure that things are kind of going in the right direction. So that'll be starting up hopefully in March or so. We wanted to get this meeting kind of out of the way first and get your feedback, and then kind of reach out to your broader constituents, figure out who's interested, who wants to be part of it, and have that on the table as well.
Okay.
I can go first.
Oh, okay, no, I just wanted to thank you guys for coming, I appreciate it. And anyone, just a couple of things, I can come at it from being on the Heritage Committee and being part of the Port Dalhousie District Development as well as Power Glen. I think there's a lot of myths and misinformation when it comes to what a heritage district is, because I also live in one, so I deal with it every day, and it means I don't deal with it every day because it's not actually a thing. I think the last permit that was issued on Queen was for front porch.
Yeah, Queen Street is pretty small, so
We're pretty small, yeah. So I would strongly urge everyone to kind of go through the Heritage Act, go through the Ontario Toolkit, because it will dispel a significant number of the myths. I can certainly say when Power Glen was done, it includes modern buildings that are not, that yes, they're part of the district, but it's not impacting them in any way. And I think actually we left a couple of buildings out initially on that because at the owner's request, they were planning on demolishing. And the other thing I would suggest very strongly to everyone is to look up and I can send it to Rachel, the University of Waterloo studies that were done for heritage districts across the province, because again, it dispels a significant number of the myths of impacts on property values, which according to their study, which is very robust, it maintains or actually increases property values. And as well, it talks about the implications of living in a district. Third thing I will say is talk to Mike Mazzolino, who owns a individually designated building on St. Paul Street, and ask him about his experiences dealing with the Heritage Committee when he was doing renovations as well as getting grants. I can guarantee you Mike will tell you the truth. And as Mike likes to tell me, it's probably the easiest kinds of permits that he has ever dealt with in the city, and he deals with a lot of them. So I want to thank you guys. I think it's important to keep in mind as well that it is about the exterior of the building, and it's
going to weigh heavily, I think, on streetscape quality. And I have been on walks with Heritage Advisory Committee people from out of town, as well as heritage advocates. And their comments about our downtown are that it is one of the most incredible downtowns they've ever seen. And that keeping the streets, it's really important, and they've strongly recommended keeping, you know, the facades and ensuring the quality of it. Yeah, and if you want to know what a business heritage district looks like, go to Yorkville. And I think you'll see that it has not stopped development or Queen West and Toronto. Yeah, like you can go to those heritage districts and I think you'll be it's very noticeable that they are a district, but it hasn't stopped progress or development.
It sounds like one thing I want to mention, I'm glad to hear that Mike had a good experience, because one thing that you hear, I think of heritage is like, you got a committee that's gonna say no to everything, you're gonna have a city plan, like a heritage plan that's gonna say don't do anything, and my job basically, or like my goal, is to make the process as easy as possible for people, and it's to kind of people, I don't know, you don't want people to be scared to come to you, right? So I'm a resource for homeowners. I'm often trying to help owners like make good decisions and whatnot. And just for example, like in 2022, we had 36 applications to the city and 35 recruited. And all of them were approved within a month. Some of them I can approve in a day because we now have delegated authority to do that type of thing. So if it's an easy project, I can literally have it returned back within 24 hours. Which a lot of people are surprised by. And so the goal though is to make it as easy a process as possible. And our heritage committee is very flexible, probably one of the most flexible heritage committees I've ever seen. To be honest, I've worked in a lot of places, and they really kind of get it. They get that the downtown and that the city is growing, and that we have a housing crisis, and you know there needs to be change. You know, in fact, just last month they were talking about, you know, they were glad to see that an additional dwelling unit was being put into Port Lucie, which is like amazing. And like stuff like that, like it's a very flexible committee, and the heritage world is St. Catherine different. People would be really surprised by it. And so, yeah, if you ever have to meet for our heritage committee meetings, they're all on YouTube. But yeah, they're a very good group, and they get it. So yeah.
Yes, I'll be really quick. Just kind of want to echo a little bit of what Robin was saying, excuse me, with regards to the reason why this is coming up. I'm seeing personally as well across Ontario, BIAs are looking at situations like this because of the changes in the provincial regulations, where we're losing or at risk of losing a lot of our very beautiful, unique downtown, St. Catherine being, as far as I'm concerned, top of that list. So we're not the only one looking at this as a solution. So I'm grateful the city is being very proactive, that they're doing a lot of consultation, and I'm very grateful for that. This may be a little bit too early in question, because it may be part of the plan phase, but and maybe I'm not helping to dispel those myths, but there is a rumor that sometimes when a building is designated heritage and you are looking to make renovations at a little bit of a higher cost, will the city be looking at implementing grant programs to help offset those costs?
So we do have a grant program right now. It's not a big program because most of our properties are residential, and the costs, you know, associated with that's as much, although nowadays just the cost of materials. The grant program isn't going as far as the usage. But essentially, we're able to provide homeowners with up to $5,000 in terms of a matching grant for homeowners that can do wonders for them. For commercial properties, it might be a little bit different, but once this is in place, we might be able to say, you know, we need to have a more robust program. And, you know, the council vibrant. These types of programs to ensure that, right? So I think that would be the argument that we would make is, you know, we've implemented this heritage district. We currently have about $20,000 that we can provide to people. Is there an opportunity to ask for more funding? And then, you know, provide that to the owners as they require it. And so I would be really hopeful that that would be the case because I think we've seen a lot of success with it. It does help offset some of those costs. And yeah, everybody that I've worked with on it, the projects ended up looking fantastic. And so from a property value perspective, when you do those projects right on heritage buildings, it only helps your property values later. right? So the second you start mucking with things in a way that you shouldn't have been doing, like you shouldn't even do it the right way, that starts a deterioration, and that's where we're gonna have issues.
So that's under our heritage grant program. We also have a community improvement plan, that also has a heritage component. So we have a facade grant program that gives you a little extra money if you are a heritage building, if you are looking to fix some of those features. And then part of our tax incentive, if you're looking for a larger redevelopment, let's say you're keeping the heritage building, you'd like to put a tower up above, there is an extra percentage in evaluation that comes with it. We are trying to be supportive, and there's councils that are asking for, us to look into some tax reductions for heritage properties as well.
David, you're next.
I may not be making some friends around this table, but I'm gonna make some observations if I may. My Robin was looking at me directly, some of her comments.
I just know.
James and I have met on another occasion, on other properties. The problem that some property owners are gonna have is that you're taking away property rights when you designate an area. It is now under the control of provincial and municipal authorities, and people will be losing a lot of the property rights. A lot of I've had discussions the last year or so with a number of, don't get me wrong, there are places, probably like this church, the courthouse, they should be preserved, but they have an overall encompassing area. And which I just heard, everything comes under the control, depending on the severity or the degree of what it is. You now have infringed on individual property rights. And I believe that it should be voluntary for a number of properties. You aren't going to have a heritage building that perhaps the owner wants to redevelop and put an ugly 20-story building up, because they must conform now to a site plan agreement, bylaws and building permits to enable to do that. The biggest concern that I have, and if I'm part of the mess, please somebody inform me. When you come under the jurisdiction of the different agencies, it's very onerous and difficult. Onerous are the same words. That you've taken away the ability of individual property owners to do what they want. When something comes under a heritage designation, you realize you can't sell that building except for the same thing. And if somebody wants to change it for one reason or another, demolish part of it or whatever, then you're at the discretion of the municipality or all those agencies. So the overall heritage designations on certain properties I'm in favor of. If it encompass a whole downtown area, it scares me.
We hear that a lot. I think there's a few things we can speak to. So one thing is that, I mean, all property owners are under some degree of regulation to begin with, right? Like we have to follow zoning, we have to follow building codes, we have to follow all of those things. So yes, this is another layer, but as James said, it's not intended to be really restrictive or detailed or onerous, right? And it's, you know, that you can look at it a couple different ways too. I mean, we know that like the Heritage Act is a provincial act, yes, but all of this is managed on a municipal. There's no provincial control in terms of anybody's property. You know, everything is done through the heritage planner and heritage committee and stuff like that. And it's also done in consultation in most cases with other departments if it's a big development, right? Or if it's something that's going to require a site plan or other planning or building permits or things like that. There's a process where, you know, we've got a building permit application where heritage is just a box that gets checked on, something like that. And it's dealt with in a sort of holistic manner, I think, in most municipalities. So it's not all that different, especially if it's a big development where you have to deal with those other layers of regulation. It kind of gets all part and parcel together. The other thing is, again, with the individual property restrictions and stuff like that, that's where the plan comes in, and that list of things that don't require alteration permits come in. We don't want people to need alteration permits to, you know, maintain, like, general maintenance and stuff like that is almost always not requiring a permit. If you're not like replacing something with a totally different material, typical things that we have as those list of things, those list of alterations that don't require permits are, changing your roofing material from, if you've got asphalt shingles and you're changing it with asphalt shingles, no permit required usually. If you're painting your trim and it's already painted, no permits required. If you're doing general maintenance and upkeeping, no permit required. What we want to use that permit process for is anything that's going to really drastically change the materials or look and feel of a building. And it's usually a pretty high level change to begin with, or, something like we can make very tailored rules to a community again, right? If you're replacing, if you have vinyl windows and you're replacing it with new vinyl windows, usually permits are not required. So it's more of those things that affect very specific types of features or are part of very, very large scale development processes that fall within those, the sort of policies and guidelines.
Yeah, the other thing I would maybe add is, yes, it does, there's restrictions on you, but there's also restrictions on your neighbor as well, right? And so your property value also depends on how your neighbor's doing too, right? And so if you know that your neighbor has, isn't able to do certain types of alterations that maybe would devalue your property because of the look, because of the aesthetic, whatever it is, or, the type of addition they add, this helps with that, right? So you then, that your neighbor has to, maintain their building to a certain standard, that's gonna, help business, that's gonna help your business or your property. So there are benefits in that sense too.
And it, like, as I mentioned before, it applies to city-owned properties as well. Like, everybody is playing by the same rules. The city can't go in and make changes to the streetscape, to public spaces or things like that without also following the plan and making changes that are consistent with the way that everybody else is doing it.
So I'm really happy to see what's going on in the downtown with respect to heritage. But I guess you're at step one, and Margaret and James talked about programs to assist the redevelopment of downtown. And I guess I'm hoping that council has already, you've messaged council that that's going to be required. Because we talked about how wonderful the downtown is and how wonderful the streetscape is and how it needs to protect. All of a sudden, all those lovely architectural details, when you want to maintain those architectural details, instead of taking James 5 minutes to deal with it, it's going to take 2 or 3 hours to talk to the person that's doing the maintenance on the outside of this building. So I don't know what magic happened from the northeast corner of Ontario and St. Paul, but the work that was done there, I couldn't believe how nicely it's been done and reflects the heritage. So I would encourage, my encouragement is, this is step one. Step two is there's going to be a ton more work for you, not just a little, a ton. Because of the scale of what you're talking about, the quality of the St. Paul streetscape is going to take a lot of work. So resources are going to be needed for staffing. Resources are going to be needed to encourage property owners to do the right thing. In other words, to restore their buildings. If they're doing maintenance, do it properly. And that's a big change. Changing vinyl windows to vinyl windows is easy. Changing wooden windows with single glazing to wooden windows with double glazing, that's a different challenge. And so I just encourage that staff message this stuff to council. It's a big change, and not necessarily, and even providing advice to the people who want to change. You're going to need to hold hands, in order to get people to do the right thing. And I think what's happening is good. I just hope we're not creating a whip for our own back. That we in fact create the tools as part of the implementation process to be successful.
I noticed you were asking about community involvement, getting us more involved. How often, where, what capacity? What are these meetings?
So we haven't set a date or anything yet for the first public meeting. We'll talk about that after this, and then talk to Rachel about dates that might make sense and reach out to your community, because we want to make sure that as many people that want to be part of the process are out. So we'll talk to Rachel and set that up, and she can probably distill that message to everybody. And then we're going to have a steering committee that will be members, as well, people who are really keen to be part of it. Hopefully they'll meet on a monthly basis. It's still we're still feeling out how it's going to work. But the goal is to be as inclusive as possible and to make sure that there's as much collaboration as possible, because we don't want in 6 months from now, somebody can say, I didn't hear this, right? And what's going on? And that's just not a good way to do things, so.
And before a public consultation event, we would provide we provide a letter to or a sort of flyer or something that the city will distribute to all property owners within the district. We usually have lots of postings on the municipal, if they've got, social media accounts and stuff like that. We've got announcements and stuff like that go out everywhere. So people are aware that the consultation events are taking place, that they can come and participate. We know that people can't always come out at, on a particular date if they've got other obligations or things like that. So we have a lot of other tools for online interaction as well to help. So what we found to be really useful is we have a sort of interactive map that we will launch when we do the first public consultation meeting, where anyone can, once you log onto the page on the city's website that has a dedicated spot for this study. We would have people log on, and that people can basically put points on a map and say, like what Jennifer brought up earlier, this church, this is really important. We need to consider this, or this particular streetscape. And sometimes it's not even like I value this or this is important. Sometimes in past studies, people have brought to our attention, like, this streetscape is really inconsistent with this one. It's got different treatments and landscaping, and we want to have a broader feel, or, we've got all kinds of different ways that people have provided us feedback on these maps, but it's really valuable to us. And it doesn't mean necessarily that people have to be at that specific consultation event. So we like to have tools that people can kind of keep engaging with throughout the process as well.
Okay, so I guess my question was, is it like just our specific area, or when do we find out if our building is part of that heritage?
So that becomes part of just sort of throughout the whole process, right? We're going to study the entire area.
Okay.
We have to kind of do the research and understand everything. And then kind of towards the end of that study phase is when our team would make recommendations about if a particular area merits it, what that area is and which buildings fall inside that. So we would usually have, we'll show a map of the study area we started with, and then a map of whatever area we have reduced it to or expanded it to, or stick with the whole, if map that the study area that's given to us, we look at it and say, yes, this makes sense, then that's it. And then we would provide a list of all the properties within that.
Yeah, so originally I obviously created them, I drew the line essentially, and a big part of it was, we have St. Paul Street, amazing street, right? But we also have Church Street, which has all these amazing King Street towards the north end, there's some really lovely old buildings there. And you start looking at all these different pockets, and it's hard to know where to draw the line, right? And so originally my idea was let's start to be as broad as possible for now, in a way that financially made sense to the city. So we came up with an area that made sense to us. And so they'll go and they'll look at that area. And if there are parts that, don't make sense, then you just remove them. Right, and so things could get smaller, little bits and pieces could get tacked on. But right now, we decided to be as broad as possible, and it's easier to carry out from there.
So what happens to a building if they were renovations now and between that time and then they were being like heritage, or they have to change it back, or just
No, until a bylaw, until we get through both phases and a bylaw is actually passed, there are no changes in how things are done currently.
Sorry, I just a quick question. We have in our catchment, we've, had quite a few discussions on delinquent buildings. Would this change anything like that? If there's buildings that are utterly, falling apart, or that are remnants of what the building was that are now in this area? Is there any leverage then for the city? Like, I don't even know what I'm really saying. It's more so like.
It's almost like a property standard.
Are we able to kind of like tighten those up, because we're under a different set of rules, so that the building is then, forced to become more functional, or forced to be maintained instead of it falling apart?
Yeah, so we do
any level.
We do have a property, we have a property standard bylaw across the city, which could be used to enforce that type of thing.
Some municipalities can within an existing property standards bylaw, kind of add a heritage subsection that kind of ties in with things. But even then, it's a bit limited to some degree, like it would relate to sort of the overall property standards, but it's not necessarily going to force some changes, if that makes sense.
No, like coasts,
Yeah.
coasts in a direction, because obviously those standards aren't functional for those buildings now that have been like that for decades. So I just didn't know if there was.
Yeah, I don't know how this would incentivize.
Encourage, yeah, incentivize, encourage.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we would use this tool to incentivize that. It would be, think about it, if we could, but I don't know what that would be. The only thing I could say is that the downtown is going to see a lot of change over the next decade or two, right? And so with more development happening, with more people in the downtown, with more people shopping, more people going to restaurants, more people going to businesses, there's going to be more, people who previously didn't have a use for their building are going to see reasons they need to have a use for it, right? And they're going to think, we need to spruce this up, and that's where things like grant program can kick in and help with that, right? So that's kind of the argument I would maybe say, but otherwise, I don't think there's anything we have that helps to encourage it beyond that.
Well, I guess, thank you.
Yeah, no,
Thank you very much.
So I think you did for a step.
Yeah, for sure. We're glad that we're going to be coming back. So.
You're welcome to stick around and rush.
We'll let you get on with your day, but thank you all very much. And again, please continue to stay in touch with us through the steering committee, through the consultation events or anything. We really want to work with you guys and understand how to kind of make this process work best for you.
Yeah, and Rachel and I will be in close contact with each other. So anything, if you have questions, you can follow up with Rachel and get back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Says, on to segue on to events committee update.
Well, Aaron said that I can just handle this one. I only have a quick update for folks.
All right, since we're all waiting on this side, just leave this one. All right, events committee update.
Hey everyone, just have a quick update for you today. Last month, I should say, when I presented, I had shown you all a sponsorship handout that has the events on the back. There were some requests for more detailed breakdown of the sponsorship levels per event. So I've created 2 sheets so far for that. This one's the one for Holy Festival, and this one's the one for Downtown Block Party. So on one side, it's got sections that describe each of the sponsorship levels, and then on the back, you have your sponsorship grid that shows the different sponsorship levels per event. So I'm going to do one of these one-pagers for each event. So basically you have your intro sheet. So this is to try to get someone's interest in sponsorship. It's got an overview of the events. Maybe they say, oh, actually this one looks interesting. Then this is your follow-up sheet. Okay, oh, you're interested in Downtown Block Party, great. Here's more details about the different sponsorship levels. Here's the breakdown of the benefits that you get for each sponsorship level. Okay, so these are available. I got at least one copy for everyone today to check it out and become familiar with it. But I will also send out a link to you all so that you'll have a digital copy available. I apologize, we have some weird thing happening with our Xerox printers. So there's some weird color banding happening. So if you want to print out your own for printer, that is cool. And if I think we have a plan to get that fixed soon, but yeah.
And the lease is up in July. We're counting down the days quite literally.
For me to send out.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Are you moving from that area? Like you just said, building.
Oh, zero.
So the 0 is okay. So I think I was not real.
I will as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise, if anyone has any questions, let me know. I'm just working away on existing tasks, including, you know, a few more of the stages I'm gonna do for our remaining events for the year. But everything's going smoothly. I've got committees started for Block Party and Holy Festival as well. Our first Holy Fest committee meeting, I think, is coming up next week. So, and then within the next month or so, I'll be launching for the other events as well. So folks are always welcome to attend those committee meetings if you want to get into the details of what's happening for event planning, but otherwise, yeah, I'm here if you have any questions.
Gosh, I quickly tag on.
Yeah.
I do want to just say one thing, and that's a huge thank you to both Pat and Brian for the hard work they did for Black History Month. They partnered with both Future Black Female, Black Code 905, and the City of St. Catharines, and put on a tremendous month full of programming in our downtown. So huge kudos on that one. It was a very quick turnaround and lots of extra work that we weren't expecting, but it was well worth it. And actually, Brian did submit a grant for all of those initiatives and was successful in achieving it too. So well done.
Thanks for it. Thanks for it.
Yeah, $20,000 grant was.
Or you said that's what she said.
Is there anything else for us?
That's everything. Yeah, I'm just gonna ask you some questions.
I'm so sorry.
Jen, go for it.
I know this is unrelated to you.
Open letter.
Pardon?
Letter.
Sorry, this is unrelated to our specific events, but with, I've had some feedback about, Born and Raised, which will be happening in the summertime. And that, their initiative last year was, before the event, even during or after, to feed people downtown, to use the restaurants and everything else, and, no one was open.
Was it Monday?
I guess, I don't know, I have to get, I didn't attend every day, but, especially once the, evening, because the evening ends at 11 due to the, like, noise bylaw. When they were feeding everybody to go downtown, and encouraging, like, that's what they wanted to happen. I think it was only like pizza and, smoked sweet, like, there was just a handful of places, right? That they, so I don't really know what kind of, if they were just kind of saying that, or if they were like, hey, you know, is there something we can do to bring maybe some awareness about that weekend to, which is shorter this year, so that if people want to stay open later on certain days, or have different hours on those certain days to accommodate all the individuals that will be coming downtown. I just kind of wanted to table it just in case we needed to maybe do a little bit of outreach, because, you know, they may not even know that we're having that this weekend on that specific weekend, they have no idea, right? So I just kind of wanted to have that out there.
Reach out to membership that way.
Yeah, or so.
Hopefully take advantage of one.
Yeah, hopefully, that maybe if we have a schedule from them and we're able to let people know. Yeah. So,
Yeah, because of
Oh,
beautiful
that's-
restaurants downtown.
yeah, or like, I mean, I don't even know what our hours are, like, I don't know what time anybody's in, like, I go to bed at 5, okay? So, but you know, if you're able to be open until 2 or something like that, maybe there's great opportunities, like to have pizza and wings until 2. I don't know, but, if we can just maybe have some outreach.
So it's an event, Born and Raised, an event.
No, that's the music.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
All right, next I got Catherine. She wrote
Me?
this.
That's Catherine? Katie? Sorry.
You wrote this, Catherine, so no worries.
Yeah. So that's really funny you say that, Jen, because we actually had the complete opposite experience with Born and Raised, because we had one of our cocktail pop-up weekends that weekend and we staffed accordingly, and there was nobody downtown. It did not bring any traffic to the hospitality folks in downtown. Reason being, they didn't allow re-entry. So once you were in the festival, you couldn't leave to get food and go back in. So you were there from like 2 or 3 p.m. till 11 or midnight, and then folks just went home. So it's funny that they said that, because that was not like across anyone in the hospitality industry that I spoke to about Born and Raised. We were so disappointed about like it being such a big event downtown and it not actually bringing anyone to the downtown core. It would just stayed quite secluded at Montebello.
Okay, good to know. I mean, maybe, you know, what the other thing too is that, that I did, kind of notice is there's the event had really no, I mean, I guess you'd say like an MC. So there's really nobody that's able to even communicate those things to people. So I was actually wondering how they got the information to individuals to go downtown. Well, maybe because they really didn't. So it's more so like maybe, so that we have more of a successful collaboration, maybe like there's some outreach on both ends. Yeah, because I really feel like, that, yeah, I agree with you that, you know, it should be successful for everybody. Like, I mean, I'm not just talking about born and raised, I'm talking about like any great wine, whatever. It's great when we can collaborate and have synergies and it just works out for everybody.
I'll also just add on to that a little bit in context of born and raised. I know the most recent announcement has really ruffled some feathers in downtown arts community with it being born and raised and there being no real local bands that are like have remained local included in the programming. So that is also something to consider when we are engaging with it, I would say.
Born, raised, and abandoned. All right. I guess after this, we'll go to marketing. Who is handling marketing?
I can do it.
All right.
Rachel attached the report to the agenda. There's a lot of students to go through it. Please know to reach out anytime. I'm always happy to hear about things. We've been on an advisory group since the beginning of the year. It's been going really well. We have our first ad hoc meeting coming up. It's for banner design. Because we're getting a lot of requests for banners. So we're gonna try and escalate that and get a set of template up. That we might put a piece of evening there downtown. If you guys are interested in doing that, let me know. Right now I just have a dual poll trying to figure out what to date for it. Gift cards being sold as of the end of January, almost $10,000 worth of gift cards. Yes, they're going really well, and pretty much everything else in the report. To be honest, I don't want to just go through the line items with you, so please take the opportunity to read through it. I'm a little bit of a morning person, so it's very difficult. And very happy for you.
I will just say, Pat has again done an amazing job. Our socials are just going off the record in terms of, you know, interaction she's getting with the campaign she's doing. You know, you've got the one I think right now on ISOP that's just getting 1,000 input, like,
Yeah, we've been able to increase our subscribers with ISOP patrons, fans, non-supporters. We have a difficult time retaining them in the downtown. A lot of times we'll interview ISOP fans and we'll say they just come for the game, they don't spend a lot of time downtown. But we've been surveying people at our events to see how to figure out the event, and a lot of people stick to our newsletter. So we've been able to get 1,000 ISOP fans to sign up to our newsletter through this promotion, so it's been going really well for us. We sponsored the third period, and we also give away tickets to every game. So it's been a really great way for us to reach that crowd. And for the social media, I have to admit, we have 5 interns that we're working right now. 3 of them are social media dedicated. They're Gen Betters, they're supporting me. They're replacing some of the things that I'm not able to provide to the downtown in a good way. We actually depend on TikTok now. We got 24,000 views on really on this. But we're reaching that generation that if you look at our audience on all of our channels, we're not typically hitting that younger age. So we're starting to break through to it. It's really exciting. I look forward to sharing more information on that in the future.
Oh, great job.
That's great.
All right. Yeah. Sorry. Here's your.
For things like the Ice Dogs games, they get out kind of when the young kids are coming to create havoc downtown. And I know you're open.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm wondering, is there any promotion that can be done by the food outlets to attract the people coming out of the hockey games or whatever? So that we might start to change the demographic of the kind of downtown on a game night?
I noticed personally, those who are a more responsible age group, they can pregame
Oh, I see.
Yes, like they come over for dinner, they do stuff before the game, but at that point, it's reasonable sleep, people want to go to sleep. And the later it gets, the younger the demographic who does not respect sleep.
It's about 10:30 when you get out of the game, typically.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, so like you go for dinner before, and then I have heard, I have also witnessed walking home, like walking back to your car, the kids are definitely smelling a lot of marijuana. So it's explaining like, hey, you're not high, you know what I mean, but that's kind of that is 10:30, like I'm not going out with my family after that, I'm like rushing to my car.
Still pretty good for trapping that market more free, but because it is after the hour parking is free, but it's not quite what the city park charges for garages yet. You know, it's that window of where you get it, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You pay additional for when you go to a game, it's like an additional amount, so it's like over $20.
Oh, so maybe that's a thought,
Guess what?
is changing the event time for garages. So that it is immediately after 6 o'clock or whatever the normal time.
I mean, I don't want to discourage those earlier attendees.
I know what you want, but
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It almost speaks to what like Jen was talking about with the concert venues. We deal with this a lot with our tenants is like, you have all these events, different types, different demographics. How do you get the businesses to kind of capitalize on the people coming down? You know, how do you promote it? How do you get people to stop in? You know, I think, Josh, you do a better job than most, but like, you know, how do you get them to stop in afterwards, or how do you get them to stop in beforehand? So, there's definitely opportunity for that in terms of, being able to capitalize on the people coming downtown.
You know, if you want to capture that market, like while they are downtown, so they have an even better experience or like
Yeah.
a multi-layered experience, that's great on all levels. And then of course, to see the conversion, like, you know, where the businesses are making money.
Yeah, because
Mostly just restaurants.
well, I mean, you could, like, you know, you could run promotions to get people are coming down, so that's half the battle. If we have them in the core, how do we get them to draw them in? And it's tricky with every different business, but.
But even
there's an
with
opportunity.
what Amy's saying, we thought about this ourselves because we have, just say with respect to Ice Dogs, we have not sponsored as of yet, which sounds great. We love, you know, we love to sponsor. It is. But just say, you know, just like Amy's saying, it's more for restaurants. It could be more for restaurants at the moment. But then we could have, as retailers, a different incentive, which you've discussed, where if you have an Ice Dogs ticket, save it, come to Little Chief, you get 10% off, thanks for supporting our family. Yeah, like, we're, you know, it's like, hey, come to the boot shop, here's 10% off, you know, your family needs shoes for school, right?
Mhm.
Or, you know, it doesn't mean that we have to capture them in the moment. We hear it a lot with respect to, I'll just use the Ice Dogs as an example, where, they are about to go out for dinner, or they just went out for dinner, there's 10 minutes before they're going in to the Rankin Bridge, they come into our store, they love it. Are they gonna buy dog food or big bags to carry into the Ice Dog game? Or shoes? Absolutely not, right? So, us being able to create a great customer experience is our job, number one. But number two, we should be hopefully advocating for the downtown, we're invested in it. But at the same time, creating that incentive for them to come back, which, you know, there's restaurants all over the place. There's only one Little Chief, there's very few food shops, like, you know, the retailers still have to be innovative to also encourage that engagement and outreach on a different level. Like,
I'm always looking for new.
Alright.
Yeah.
New ideas for sure.
I have one I'm gonna give Kat, just don't forget, we're also competing against those outside of the downtown who are still capitalizing on Ice Dogs. A good example of corporate is Wendy's. If you have a ticket for an Ice Dogs game, if they get a point in the last,
They do cheese.
they get it, yeah, you go there, to leave downtown, you're like streets, so he does it, to go get a cheeseburger every game. So you go with the ticket, you get a free thing to get the hell out of it. But that's essentially like leave where you are and come all the way to us is what they do, because once they get into that one item, they get it for everything else.
Yeah, but the parents are like, well, I'm actually hungry too.
It's great marketing.
Oh,
And
it's
it's- they're capitalizing the game and they're getting people to drive 2 kilometers to go.
Yeah, exactly.
That's, you know, like, I speak, and, you know, empanadas and Adams Flora are right there on the pedestrian walkway, and they won't even open.
Yeah.
Right, so it's, you know, you're bringing, you know, up potentially 5,000 people to walk by your store. You want to figure out a process to where, you're right, I mean, do people want to walk around with products during the game? So, but, like, Wendy's is figuring it out, I mean, people are driving, so it's possible.
Yeah, but Wendy's food, like getting food, everyone's hungry after a game, and I'm like, let us go get a pair of boots, and I say, oh, we don't have them.
No,
That's pride of the shop.
That promotion will work for Boot Shop, but look what Jen just came up with in terms of you have a ticket, you have, you know, some sort of, if you have a ticket, you have some sort of discount code to come back with
Yeah.
or whatever, or like, you know, I saw game days, you get a family discount or, you know, you guys know your business is best, but.
Yeah, but I think what's important is like with respect to the ticket, so if you have, just say a code like Ice Dogs 10, we'll say, we have a very, very robust online business. That's something that I would not be encouraging. I would be encouraging, I want to see your physical ticket. I want to see you come downtown and give it to me. Right? And experience the downtown. And maybe then they're shopping for lunch, they're shopping for food shop, they're doing whatever. Like, they already have the physical ticket. Come and turn it in and you get 10% off. Sometimes we have individuals that will, you know, we have a lot of conversion with them, but they're not experiencing the downtown because we're constantly delivering or they're only ordering online. We have some customers that have been with us for years and after 3 years have finally come into our store for the first time. We really want to see the traffic downtown. We just are things for people are downtown and fall in love with it too, right? So it's, you know, innovating where it's bringing like people's butts in the seats downtown or to have an experience is really, I feel, where, you know, it's so important.
Kat, you got one last point?
Yeah, first, I just want to say there is still room on the marketing advisory group, so I feel like Jen,
Maybe, yes,
and maybe guys will take to that for sure. You pretty much touched on what we decided is that it's more about bringing people back. You can't do everything that day. A lot of restaurants and businesses are doing extra sales, but they are lucky to get the tickets. I think there's so many ideas here that you're all in marketing, which is part of it. We are capturing data and testimonials from people who are literally messaging us and saying, I come to every Ice Dog game, I didn't realize you had this, I didn't realize you had that. Now we have 1,000 other emails that we can survey, we started digging into that, and now they're starting to see all the other events that we come to, because this crowd is bringing their family out for something to keep them occupied, right? So I just want to encourage you that there's a lot of positive things that are coming from our connection to the Ice Dogs, but again, it's not the same day necessarily.
I mean, just start a guerrilla marketing thing for Adams Flora, you know, make a tradition of throwing roses onto the ice. It's like before every game. I mean, better than, what was it, Philadelphia did the squids?
Squid?
Oh yeah, live squids with Pittsburgh.
No, there's someone Bears, one thing, I remember that thing, just for the boss.
So if there's nothing else in marketing, we're gonna move on to the executive committee update. This only has the staff bonuses policy, it was entirely made, actually, Richard, could you just explain this? If we have a public.
Yeah, so the reason we came up with a staff bonusing policy was just because we wanted to keep the 0% increase for our budget for this year, which meant that we have no staff increases in wages, which is not the best model, for retention. So, as a way around it, the executive committee suggested that we put together a staff bonusing policy. So it is based off, it will be a year-end bonus, on 2 conditions. That one, employees are still employed, and that we have money in the budget to do it. So basically, we would need to ensure that we bring in or underspend on budget, keeping all the deliverables still, but you know, that's things like grants, sponsorships, that's a lot of additional work that our staff take on. that, as you just heard, is quite successful. So in order to reward their hard work in doing those things, we're looking to give out a small bonus to them at the year end. It cannot exceed more than 4% of the levy, and there needs to be room in the budget to accommodate the two requirements.
It was also designed just like for if we come under budget,
Yeah.
like it's an incentive to come under budget as well.
So did I hear correct that in order to meet the 0% increase, we limited the increase for staff? I do not see a bonusing policy as a replacement for an increase in staff. That is ridiculous. Number one, the bonusing thing is going to create a management nightmare. I don't agree with it at all. You don't raise staff a proper increase. Like, just as you can tell, I don't agree with it.
Rachel? I would love to.
I think your heart's in the right place. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is the board approved budget. So, there's not much I can do to change the budget.
They can eliminate it.
Yeah, I spoke against the budget, so.
You know, staff need to get paid. This is one way. It's not the best way, but
But it also doesn't stop us from coming up with a comprehensive way of actually dealing with the staffing increase in years going forward.
Yeah, like we've got young staff that are really keen. We should be just.
don't we vote next year on the budget, or is it a 2-year budget?
It's a one-year budget,
Yeah.
so next year
You can go up.
it can, up to the board, whatever. it needs to be.
We should consider it that time, I think. Personally.
We can do both.
The bonusing was a token to get over this year. Because I'm not comfortable going to my staff to say, great job, you brought in $20,000 in that grant, I'm not giving you anything as reward. So this was a method to be able to say thank you to staff for their hard work when they go above and beyond. It's not the best method, but unfortunately it's the only method we've got. So that's why I propose, well, not me, the executive committee.
So, yeah, so what do you do with the staff that just does a good job?
Well,
Doesn't break their neck to do an extraordinary job. What do you do with them?
and that's why we were looking at two different methods of bonusing. One was based on performance and one was just a year end. And the staff and the executive have agreed that it's less of a management nightmare and also not, I don't want to introduce ugliness in the workforce, if you know what I mean. So we decided to just go with the year end bonus. So it's calculated based on hours worked to figure out how much each get paid.
How much does this cost us? How much would it for 4%?
Well, it wouldn't cost anything. It's only for over on the budget.
Yeah, it's only from the surplus if we come under budget.
Okay, so how much over the budget are you?
So 4% of the budget, well, 10% would be 40,000. So 4% would be less than 5,000. I'm right on that.
40% of 40?
4%.
400,000. Let me figure it out.
It's like, you gotta figure out what the total would be if we come under.
16.
And that's only if we manage to get under the budget. It also doesn't mean anything, like ultimately it doesn't give anything if we end up under the budget.
1,600.
1,600, so there's that. Let's go with it.
Still is not, I mean, not enough, but we're moving in the right direction.
I mean, it might be something useful to have anyway, regardless of staff increases as an incentive to come under budget, but it still does not address. We need a real, like, policy in place for staff increases for your year.
If this gets us over this hump right now, I'm in favor.
It's a token for the year.
All right,
It's a token for the year.
absolutely. Shows some intent, some goodwill intent.
Can I ask what the rationale was for not giving staff an, I mean, other than the obsessive nature of people wanting a 0% increase, which doesn't work anywhere? Why was it staff and not other areas? To ensure that staff was at least receiving
What was the problem?
an
at the time?
increase that
When we-
was related to inflation.
When we passed the budget at the time, was it just because it wasn't included?
Well, there were different options provided, but the option that was selected was the 0% increase, which didn't really have
And
Which
that,
for anything, in fact, we cut back on everything. Because of inflation, everything went up, so everything got cut, unfortunately.
So there's also inflation, but also the BIA has grown. You know, we've added more staff, so the budget has grown as well. So when people are looking at it on the budget table, like it kind of gives the illusion that we're getting all this extra money to staff, but really we just improved, you know, what BIA is doing, and we already started to see some of the effects, and, you know, next year even more so. So, I mean, definitely something to think about when budget comes back up.
No, I didn't want to say anything, I will just put out there, but this is probably a little underhanded. The way that we presented the budget and got it approved by both the members and city was by department. So we didn't separate staff from the department, we kept them in their department. So if the board feels strongly enough that staff should be getting an increase, then the other option is to look more closely at each budget line to reallocate within the departments. As opposed to, yeah, so basically, like I said, staff are in the department lines, not separated, which gives, the reason I did that was to provide the board with more wiggle room, because sometimes things move in departments. So we shared a fairly high level budget with the city for approval and with the members to give the board a bit more wiggle room. But it would be at the board's discretion how that works, if that makes sense.
Robin, how does staffing increases work for the city?
It's a contract, it's a contract.
Okay.
So it's the current contract that was just worked out is 3% per year. But it's a contracted out amount. I mean, I got a raise for inflationary. I got an extra $50 the whole year.
But when, like, obviously, like, as inflation.
I don't know, David, we're gonna have to talk about whether that $50.
But like, you ultimately, as inflation will persist, every year your staff are getting paid less. Yeah.
And because we are a living wage employer, that is something that both the staff and board felt was important, because a lot of our members are living wage employers, so we should be also following that standard. It really means that when we are bringing on Canada summer students and the living wage increases, there's not enough of a difference between the management that's directing them and the staff are bringing.
That's what
in.
everyone's running into.
So it's
right
a
now.
huge disparity.
But if we have it all broken down by pillars, are we able still at this point to come up to sort of policy that gives us
We
enough?
have a cut back in each of the departments. So
Maybe that's where sponsorship comes in, like, we're having success with that. At the end of the day, anything that we're discussing here doesn't work if we don't have staff. That's just the way it is. I mean, I know that none of us, while we're doing all of our jobs, can do the exceptional work that you guys are doing every day. I am not in favor of a 0% increase. I think it doesn't even make sense. But at the same time, like, you know, we've got to approve the budget, like, and people are like, what are you gonna do? But we can't not have you guys being valued appropriately for the work that you're doing. Or more appropriately, we can't afford to lose staff. You guys are exceptional. Like, you're the whole reason why this is all working. So it's, I mean, I don't know if we're able to figure something else out.
Well, even, will this bonusing policy even give anything? Like, could it be, is it theoretically gonna be zero? Because it's contingent on coming under budget, and if the budget is that tight, is it literally like, congratulations, with $10 under budget? You know, copies for everything.
Yeah, like,
Actually, we get caught.
I know.
Saying copies. Depending on.
copies out of that machine.
But it's a bonusing policy that's contingent on coming under budget. If we're never gonna become under, I mean, we might, you know, things, you never know, that could be great. I mean, unrelated to staffing increases, it could be useful, but it theoretically is going to be nothing.
So why don't I make a proposal that, and, you know, I think you're the only one here from the executive committee, so it's, you know, sorry, Josh.
Oh.
But maybe this goes back to the executive committee to relook, at a more refined detail of the current budget to see if we can reallocate within.
Yeah, like this, I'm gonna go with.
We have a motion on the
1,
floor.
2, 3.
Do we have a motion on the floor or not?
Not yet.
Pardon?
Still explaining?
Yeah, it was just introducing the staff bonusing policy. There was gonna be a motion with regards to that, but by the way that.
There's no motion
Not yet.
on the floor.
1, 2, 3.
Is there an opportunity to put like a income stream to the BIA, like some merge or, what other guys maybe are doing to bring in a bit of extra money?
It's often sponsored for LBIs do, which we've been working really hard at, and then grants, which are not always as successful. We have, and really have taken a lot of the lead on it. Looked at different merge streams. I mean, I think the challenge with that is you need capacity to create the merge and, money as well to buy the merge before you sell it. So I think that's what's held us back from kind of taking that leap, so to speak. But it is definitely something we've been talking about a lot as a way to, how can we get more income?
Is it possible, like Kat mentioned before, about selling ad space on our newsletters?
We do that as part of the sponsorship packages typically, right?
I mean, because like merch is great, but merch has an upfront cost. Which you may be stuck with for.
We have a lot of local merch providers here in town. We partner with them where they manage the inventory and the sales are directed right to them. They already have the management structures in place on downtown on St. Paul Street. And, do a joint venture with them. They're gonna make some money as well. They're gonna manage it and bring all the challenge or take care of the challenges. And, offer some sort of, we're gonna be directing traffic there and selling products to the BIA or products to St. Catharines is definitely an opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea for sure. And to be honest, when we do merch, we are, we always use local providers where we can. Obviously, price sometimes wins out. But yeah, I like the idea of them holding the inventory and they could be almost like a make as purchased, so to speak. That model I've seen some others do in terms of private businesses, but it does often cost a lot more to create the merch on an as requested basis. Pat is working on a number of different projects with students. Do you want to share some of them?
Yeah, I was gonna, share what you saying is really getting starting a quarter, because we're working with Iron College right now to develop a marketing strategy for selling merchandise and how we can make that revenue line, so it's something that we are talking. I'm trying to think about it. And, I'd love to bring you on that marketing,
Katie, you're up next.
I was just gonna say, I think in solving this issue, we probably are too late to try and consider ideas for new revenue generation to address not having an increase for staff, because that at the end of the day would just ask more of them to do more and just to get them paid what is a deserving wage and an increase that they need. And I think all of us, from what I can tell, are in agreement that we don't really agree with a budget where there's a 0% increase for staff. So if that's something that we all agree on, then why don't we open it up and take a look at it again, because it doesn't seem to mesh with any of our values. And then thinking of different revenue generation ideas separately from that, once that's been addressed, would be very helpful for other things as well.
I think that's a great idea, Katie. I move that we amend our budget to give the staff increase that's given to city hall staff in their contract.
At least.
I don't know how to tie it in.
And there'll be a process to amend the budget.
Yeah.
It's gonna be whatever you know.
It's internally within the departments, so.
What will be the process? Would we go look at the stuff where it comes out first? We just mandate the 3%? Do we tie it into when did the last staff increase happen?
Was that last year or the year before?
Because I know we did
Maybe
something,
last year.
because we did something that brought everybody up to what we felt was like a reasonable standard.
Mhm.
But then we got them at that standard and now we're letting it.
And sliding back.
Friendly amendment, Stephen,
Pardon?
friendly amendment, I agree with what you say. But I would like not to see it tied to City Hall, I would like it to stand on its own.
Well, what are we gonna do? You're gonna need a way to learn about what is an appropriate increase. And City Hall, you know, Rachel deals with them every day. Our other staff deal with them all the time. It's the same, it's a similar kind of skill, you know, you're administrative in nature, you're quasi-professional in nature, you know,
We were,
unless there's another rule of thumb.
there was something we were looking into tying into like cost of living.
Cost of living.
And then whatever that happens to is, it would automatically
Yeah, that's fine.
tie that in. So if cost of living goes up, it goes up.
Wouldn't mind the guideline in City Hall, you know? I don't wanna have-
But if cost of living goes down, it doesn't.
Has
Like, it
that
doesn't,
ever happened?
like reverse it, I don't know, I'm just saying,
I
like, are we allowed to maintain it?
I don't know, I suppose if we had like an apocalypse.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's what scares me.
Is there any mechanism, Rachel, that you can think of that could tie into some sort of cost of living?
I mean, cost of living is often the one, right? Because that's how living wage is kind of calculated with regards to the increasing. And I think we should be mirroring so that we do keep the difference, so to speak, between, you know, cannabis summer jobs per se versus management staff, to make sure that there is always, you know, the reward based on education and so forth. Just as an aside, I just looked up cost of living for 2024 and it is 4.8%. So, I mean, what my recommendation probably would be to the board is that we do something for this year that's a temporary fix, so to speak. And then going forward, we have something in our HR policy or a separate policy that talks about what amount we're tying into for each year, so that we're making sure this doesn't happen again.
So the governance,
A new policy would be governance for this year's staff. We could probably do a sheet that.
So with this, are you saying like you want to do something this year, like still do this to plug the hole?
I thought that was Stephen was, his motion was for.
Sorry.
My apologies, like still wants to do the, I was just bringing up, still wants to do the bonusing policy for if we come under budget to plug the hole. Will we come up with something more comprehensive?
I was hoping to replace that motion.
Yeah, we can, I'm not attached to this is just like I said, a token. I much prefer your motion.
So even if there's good qualities in this, it's still be incorporated into a more comprehensive policy, but like how, whatever the last time on it is, how long is that gonna stop?
Yeah. So the most recent suggestion is the professional way to do it. Think about a compensation package for staff, you know, kind of comprehensive, but we're in a bit of an issue here where.
I feel like, if I'm sorry, Stephen, for talking over, I feel like what we need to do is this year just Band-Aid it, so to speak. Or maybe that's with Stephen's amendment for the 3% match the city, just to get through this year. But then we use this year to create more of a comprehensive compensation package of what is the policy and how do we do it each year.
I prefer to have a longer policy, it's kind of locked in, so no going forward.
if the staff that's here decide to stay with us.
Yeah.
So I don't know how well that actually works unless they are completely part of every process. I mean, in this now moment that we're talking about, that is not tomorrow. And everyone's lives change. I mean, I just, I don't know how, you know, even a 0% budget change came to the table.
I don't remember.
But I mean, I don't know why we're sliding back like this. I don't understand why this wasn't top of mind, like at the very beginning of, that we weren't maintaining. I understand that a Band-Aid might be necessary, but I think that that is a terrible thing to do this year, because if the proof's in the pudding, we attracted and retained the staff. That has yielded tons of more grants, sponsorships, and an exceptional transformation of the downtown association. So if everyone thinks that band-aiding that for the entire year, we're at the very beginning of the year, is sustainable to maintain everything that's happening. Because if we lose one cog in the wheel, it could all start to unravel rapidly. I think that that's like wishful thinking. I think that that's not, I don't think that that's very smart.
I think the challenge was though, you know, unfortunately, when we start our budgeting process, it's usually around August. We tried to do more of a public format this year for our budgeting process. We had budget committee meetings where it was a couple people from the board that showed up. We had very low engagement when we were planning our budget. So that was probably why our budget passed and not all board members feel supportive of, because maybe you weren't aware of the details. So I'm sorry for maybe being a bit pointed in this, but I encourage all board members to be more actively engaged when the budget is being planned. I usually draft options because it has to be done in these ones, right? But at the end of the day, it is the board that approves the budget. And I follow the board's direction with regards to what should go or not go in that budget. So if we aren't happy with the way the budget went this year, and I'm hearing that loud and clear, and I agree with you, I'm not happy either, then please be engaged for next year's budget, because it's the only way we change it is through engagement.
Well, I know that no one knew what they were voting for streetscape.
So having said all this, to get over this hump, so to speak, I would, and I can't really propose, because I'm not a board member, but I would encourage a board member with, so like a sort of motion on the floor to perhaps, have the executive committee look at each department budget line to see if salaries for this year as a temporary measure can be amended to provide a 3% increase to staff, and that a comprehensive compensation policy be created going forward.
Yes.
Therefore, you have to react to my amendment, which will then vote on that, and you vote on Stevens. I agree with you are saying. That puts both of our amendment and with motion off the table, Stephen.
This is the first motion technically, correct?
So my motion hasn't been amended.
He didn't-
and seconded,
You didn't put it up yet.
but, so I guess just a change to what has been said based on David's comment, perhaps increase could be cost of living this year. But my recommendation would be that we move to give the staff on their anniversary date, an increase that represents cost of living. And
4.8%.
and that the board consider a comprehensive remuneration process to come forward in the future. Prior to the next budget.
I'll withdraw my amendment and I'll agree with what Steve just said.
Before we go, what clarify, what would the anniversary date be?
At the staff,
Of their individual stuff?
yeah, so it varies across the board.
Yeah, and, you know, in my world, money isn't the reason that people stay in jobs. But money is what lets people know they're being dealt with fairly, and I think that's important.
Rachel, can you read that motion off?
Yeah, I was trying to write it at the same time. So that the executive committee will look at modifying department budget lines so that staff on their anniversary date receive 4% increase, matching the cost of living increase for 2024, and they look to create a comprehensive compensation policy going forward.
I think we can probably do that in the next executive, like I'm around still for that one, so like it.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I can't see there any, there's nothing logical, because we just gotta deal with the next executive. Because we can still, anything we want from this, we can still pull in.
And it can always, we can see, it could potentially be applied retroactively. Think of start dates. Most people don't start at the beginning of the year, I don't think, on staff or it's this.
Very rare to hire reviews.
That's implementation.
All right, Rachel, can you read that one aloud?
Yeah, so again, that the executive committee look at the individual department budget to reallocate so that staff on anniversary date receive a 4% matching the cost of living increase to their salary for 2024, and that they look to create a comprehensive compensation policy going forward.
David?
All right, mine is withdrawn, and I don't think he had a seconder for what Stephen just
No, we
said, and I'll second that.
All right, so David's a second.
All right, and any opposed?
Any opposed? All right, maybe I can take a look at it. So, in that case, Rob, that's pretty much.
Yeah, it's done.
Awesome. Update from updated financials.
I don't have them, we're finished, well, we're still getting audited stuff, but we're like right in the throes of audit. So our bookkeeper is just being swamped with figuring all that out.
How badly is that gonna affect the motion we just? did?
Our audit or?
Yeah, our audit and our financials.
Our audit will change what we've got and our financials won't really change either, to be honest with you. I mean, we've got a pretty healthy reserve. That's something that I kind of focused on building up when I started, so,
Healthy reserve and also great grants.
Yeah.
Those, yeah.
Yeah, but it's because of you guys.
Yeah, and they do it just because it's their job.
but I think that, I will say though, I think that's why our staff are truly amazing, and I know I brag about them a lot, that they truly deserve it. Like, we have, you know, and that was very biased, but we really have the best staff. Like, I was delegating in council on, I kind of remember what it was. And Lindsay, for example, was up before me, and I was almost in tears because of how eloquent and how passionate her delegation was. And that's just one example, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure if any of you have ever spoken to Kat, you can see her passion for downtown. I mean, she lives and breathes downtown. You can't get any more passionate.
So there was a problem when we made the budget. When we made the budget, the grants did not occur. Yeah, you can't bank on those.
Yeah.
So we have to make a budget and then have like a wish list beyond our budget. If we get grants, we do these things, because originally, everything in the budget was, this is what we can do.
To some extent, so the one thing I will say though, is if you look at how we budgeted for our events specifically, for example, for this year, where we do try as many grants and as many sponsorships as we can, none of our events happen to be on the budget. I mean, Go Green has $50. Holy, I think, is $500. No event can get pulled off without thousands of dollars. So we really are creating a budget that is a bit dreamy, and is dependent on staff getting sponsorships and grants.
Yeah, I think you're underestimating. You're making a budget based on your best information that you have. It's not dreamy.
Sure.
It's a thoughtful process based on the best information you have. You're gonna do your best to strive to meet the budget, and sometimes you'll be over and sometimes you'll be under. Like, there are swings and roundabouts, and I'm sure we all know what swings and roundabouts are when dollars come. You know, so, yeah, no, yeah.
So there is something I want to talk about the financials. We'll get to, I guess, can we skip over the financials? We have nothing else to cover financials. For financials, we have nothing else to cover right now, correct? So it's also going to talk about fire. Yeah. Streetscapes and sustainability update. Do we have anything that's important?
I don't think so. Lindsay's been busy working on a whole bunch of stuff. She's updating the tree report right now. We're working on the Go Green event that's coming up May 25th, I believe it is, off by heart, which will be a really exciting event. We're doing lots of walking tours. We're working again with Marilyn Iwolf downtown.
Is it tour tomorrow, is there, or next week?
It's,
I thought there was a tour tomorrow.
Is there a tour tomorrow?
yes, it is. It's at 9 tomorrow. And the streetscape.
Oh, you're good.
tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, I will lost
Wednesday.
track. Those, yeah, that's Lindsay.
It's Wednesday, 9:00.
Wednesday,
Yeah, I just attended their meeting this morning in order to be there.
Cool. Yeah, Lindsay's getting great engagement and she's really good at bringing partners on. So yeah, we're excited for the beach, so what, and the committee doing.
birthday,
Yeah.
are you holding 22nd?
Yeah.
Clean up.
Yeah, we're hoping to do a big scale cleanup downtown, so if you guys are free for Earth Day, we're looking into, I'm waiting for a meeting with the city, but I'm hoping that we can do a bit of a partnership split, so to speak. So we've got already a local member who regularly comes out and does cleanups in our downtown, Lindsay. Will come out that morning to do a big, yeah, BHA consultants, good job.
Thank you very much for supporting your initiatives.
Yeah, they're amazing. And then Lindsay's in communication with another one of our members, it's quite a large member downtown, to see if they will come on board too, to bring out more volunteers. And like I said, we'll just do a huge cleanup list. So we're really excited for that.
In that case, governance, do we have any?
There's so more. I don't know what you're gonna say.
So, when is Earth Day?
April 22nd.
Jen, no, say it, Jen, you're gonna.
No, I just want to miss anything that people don't know about stuff. She's also preparing the modular tree and perennial garden pilots right now. That's really important. And that will also kind of be correlated with the adopted tree program for the launch for that, which I'm not sure if there's an exact date yet. I think that when she's finishing onboarding the interns, she'll have a little bit more of like a streamlined schedule for the exact dates on that.
Lindsay has lots of interns that she uses.
Yeah, she has a ton.
But quite the skills in finding interns.
And also, she also works with Arbor STC. They're going to be doing a canvassing initiative around Queenston neighborhood, like Hague. They put in 18 trees last year. There's not a lot of our ground downtown is covered with concrete, but I know that they were also talking about increasing the canvassing potentially to the downtown to put trees in the ground downtown, not just in the neighborhood. That's being tabled as well. The cycling committee, the library has the bike kits. If you need a bike kit, that's been successful. They're also moving forward with the bike valet bike box. So I'm sure there'll be more of an update for cycling just underneath Streetgate at next meeting. Mind you, we're really hoping that Lindsay will be able to present at the next meeting or two.
In that case, anything with governance, and if Karen's not here, she another meeting.
Yeah, I will just quickly share governance. So thank you to those who were able to come to our first visioning session. We will be hopefully sending out a date for the next one. I encourage if you can, please come. We want to help just update our vision for the SCDA. So we'd love your input on that. So stay tuned. I'm just waiting to hear back from Karen on some dates, and Karen is gratefully, or I'm really grateful to her, but I'm thankful to her for leading that visioning session. Good job.
Last time it was just Stephen and Orhan. That would count. Advocacy.
Advocacy, I mean, Charlotte, I don't want to take your mic, but I guess I'll just share a quick update that we have looked to launch a subcommittee from advocacy that's focusing on second story residential. So that one is quite exciting, and I haven't shared the committee yet, but Lindsay has posted on this platform called Ripen, I guess, where you can get interns. So we're hoping to set up interviews with the University of British Columbia to potentially get some interns to look at creating the value of our downtown and measure that, to measure the value of our downtown. So I'm excited for that. So I'll keep you guys posted if we're successful again.
All right, executive director update. You're also covered with all the rest of the information.
Yeah. I know we're over, so I'm gonna keep it really short and sweet. I was able to meet with 4 businesses that I have not connected with before. And met one new business owner who's opened the doctor's office downtown. So just really excited to be making those connections. Last week, the week before, we had a Rock student and her professor share research on female entrepreneurs in the downtown, which was very good. She got a lot of interaction with female entrepreneurs and was really grateful for their feedback and insight. And just a couple of shout outs since Robin's still here. patio applications are opening soon and fees were reduced by 50%. So huge thank you, because Council McPherson made that move.
What other patio fees now, Brian?
They vary, so I cannot give you a complete number of that and how much space you're using and where you're doing it and so forth. And then business license fees, so again, Council McPherson made a motion, they are reduced by 50% as well, so another win. And then another quick shout out, the Riordan shelter opens today. So that is, I think, really positive, that will be a 24/7 shelter. So that is something we have not had in our downtown for a while. And it has been a big gap, which is why we've seen an increase in need in our downtown. So I'm really hoping it will help fill that gap.
Does it have its own little community space as well in this
It
case?
does, got a large kitchen and eating area, so they'll have lots of places to go. I don't know if
Oh, no, it's a fantastic. I toured with regional councilors and city staff there on Friday. It is a very nice commercial kitchen that has never been used at all. It was purchased, it came with everything that's contained in the shelter came from Alberta. And the kitchen just happened to be a facility that was kitted out and never used. So it will be staffed by 2 cooks, 24/7. They'll be preparing meals for those who are in the shelter here and the shelter in Niagara Falls.
What location?
Riordan.
Oh, the one that.
Is it the mobile one? Is that, I heard on the.
Yeah, it's not moving, it's
Is it up for 2 years?
It's 2 to 3 year plan until anyone is used, the region purchased the units, so once St. Catharines has our permanent location, the units will be moved probably to another municipality. But it does have community space in the center. If the double beds are occupied, it can actually take up to 60 individuals. They are accessible units. But the regional staff who are the cooks are very excited to be using the kitchen because it's literally, they were feeling that night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like clear bill of everything.
Do they supply like a breakfast, lunch and dinner type of
Yep.
thing?
Yep, it's fully run by the.
And is this like families inside or is it just like a couple single?
It's singles and couples. The regional policy is that little ones never have to go into a shelter. Littles do not go into a shelter. They regional staff facilitate hotel rooms, like kitchenette kind of hotels or motels for them, and that's where they are. But it's it's something very good and it is fully fenced. And there will be outdoor space as well.
Oh, nice.
Do they have showers and?
Oh, yeah,
And
they
laundry?
They have showers, they have laundry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's quite a, as everyone has said, they're from Alberta oil fields, so
Oh, yeah.
that's, whatever an oil worker was living in and it was good enough for them, it's a good facility for.
Yeah, they're like mobile container hotel.
Yeah.
Situations, yeah.
Yeah, the laundry facilities are really nice, brand new washing machines, state of the art.
Well, not standing it's on city property.
Yep.
Do you have an idea, or you may given, what is the cost of this whole project?
I know that to purchase the units, I don't know what the running costs are, because they're still working those details out at this point. So the city donated the parking lot space.
Right.
So to purchase the units and to have everything up and running was around $3 million. Which I think most people can agree is a pretty good amount for up to 60 shelter
No, I
beds.
just had no idea.
Yeah, they don't have a final number for the day-to-day operating yet, because they're still working some details out, but
That's fine, around the field.
yeah, that's $3 million.
Being the container, yeah, it's fantastic. It's just- Like you said, once the current location goes in, these are just gonna go somewhere else in the region?
Yeah, that's the idea. The region's currently looking at, and I think we have a meeting next week. Yeah. With looking at where a permanent build can go. where that will be. Once that's decided and built, then these units can be literally just put on the back of a truck and moved somewhere else. But it was a community effort and we have to give a huge shout out to lots of community members, most especially Rankin, because they helped the region with a lot of the infrastructure stuff. And Electra did an amazing job and so did Enbridge.
So I will also just say that Phillips Fire have been filling the gap until it was open today. So huge shout out to Karen and her congregation for really filling that need when they were in such desperate situation. And I also want to do a couple different shout outs. So Kat takes the lead on helping us be involved in an initiative called Out of the Cold, which hopefully you're all aware of. So thank you to, we have board members and counselors that go and city staff. It is a very, I don't know if I can call it rewarding, but to me it's rewarding to be able to give out meals to those in need, humbling, absolutely. So Lajology Josh provided all the meals before. The office, yeah, the office last night provided food, and we're gonna be working with Zalea, who's one of our new members, to provide them for March 31st. But yeah, it was, so last night it was on and we didn't have enough food. There were people lined up. It's heartbreaking, but you really see the need. And it's not always that an obvious need, right? There were a lot of people that came to the door. You can't judge based on looks or appearance, right?
Is there a time of year where demand is higher or lower? Because I know like I've done it later in the year. You almost give away everything, and I did it early in the season. It was demand was lower.
We can talk about it in depth. They do have historical data. It was several years, and it's basically judged on historical data. But then there's probably like the weather really warm, like or another organization to do a dinner, so it's really not. But usually it's based on historical data. If that helps address the address.
Stephen, you gotta go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go really quick motion to accept the reports as presented. All right, David, Trevin, can I go camera really quick? Is that at all possible?
Yeah, just stop recording.
Okay, yeah.
Camera, another camera. All right, in that case, can I get a motion to adjourn? All right, it's, let's get the hell out of here.